These are Cinerace 20 1.2s. This one is a dark orange and this one is purple, and today we're going to talk about them. Right, for once I'm going to keep this mercifully brief, or as brief as I'm physically able to. This is the Cinerace 1.2 BNF version, which I bought from Your FPV, and I've stuck a little crossfire antenna, or should I say crossfire receiver in the back, and a little FPV cycle mini Mortal T. And this is a Cinerace 1.2 frame that I bought in dark orange. And basically the difference between these two guys is this one is using the guts from an iFlight's A85, which is this frame. And when I was looking to build one of these and I wanted some 1303 or 1303.5 mortars, I couldn't find any in stock, so I messaged Your FPV and he kindly donated or sent me an Alpha A85, iFlight Alpha A85 with 1303 mortars on for pretty much not much more than the price of the actual mortars themselves. So this guy's using the guts. It's got an iFlight 20 amp AOI board in it. It's using the 1303 5000 kV mortars, and as you can see, I've bodged basically a Naked Hero on top, in this case a Hero 8, and because I don't like the little sort of attachments that most people use Naked Heroes on, mine's are sort of all in one, and I've just basically made a 3D printed camera mount for it. So in terms of differences between the new BNF and the original version, the new BNF has a new camera mount, which is this one. It should have a little standoff here, but I've misplaced it. So they've fixed the camera mount on the original one, which apparently broke really easily. These ones feel really sturdy, good quality, really stiff plastic, and I've bashed and crashed mine a million times, and that has been fine. They've also added the LEDs on the side, and you can see that the dark orange one actually works better in my opinion than the purple one, because you can't see the LEDs on the dark orange one. On the purple one you can kind of see them a little bit more, but other than that it's pretty much business as usual. So this guy has got the Goku F4 AOI flight controller in it. We've got a Cadex Vista, but interestingly on Banggood the 1.2 comes with the Cadex Polar Nano, and the ones from Your FPV come with the much better, in my opinion, Nebula Pro Nano, which is pretty much the same quality as the Nebula Pro or the original DJI camera, just shrunk to a tiny little 14 by 14 camera, which basically means that you get the full quality of the DJI system in a really tiny package. This little guy's using the 1203 mortars that it came with. And when I was building mine, I kind of looked at the Flywoo mortars because they have 1303.5 mortars, which I thought was going to be an ideal size, but they're not using them. They're using these NIN 1203, which I thought was a little bit of an odd choice, but having flown them, I think it's a really good choice. So as I said I was going to keep this brief. If you want to sort of skip to the verdict, I absolutely love these little guys for a number of reasons. If we set mine out the way, which is, in my opinion, not as good as the BNF, everything on this guy has been shrunk down to its most humanly possible size. So we've got a little 2-inch ducted quad, and I say ducted, you're not really getting any benefit from these ducts because the props sit sort of 2/3 of the way down, so all it's really doing is acting as a big sort of bumper rather than proper ducts like you would get on the Squirt, etc. But the actual design of the quad is, I think, fantastic. It's basically just held together by a bolt at the front and back and a bolt at the front and back again on the bottom. And if you undo those bolts, everything just kind of falls apart, and you realise that you've got this little diamond shaped piece of carbon with the AOI board mounted onto it, and then the actual Vista sits over the top on these little 3D printed sort of standoffs. So if I just take it apart and show you, but before I do that, if we just weigh it, it weighs 125.8 grams. So it's a hefty little thing, and that additional weight over the original one is of course the LED strips, which must weigh sort of 5 or 6 grams. But I'll take it apart now and show you it inside. So that's those 4 bolts out of the way, and you can see what we've basically got in here. So if I just pull the camera out the front and then this out the back, you can see possibly that basically the front 2 ducts just slide together, and there's a central standoff that just joins them together in the middle, and at the same at the back. And then we've got this little 3D printed sort of antenna and in this case Crossfire nano mount, which works really nicely. And then if we just pull it apart, you'll see it kind of almost just folds apart, which is a little bit scary until you get used to it. And you can see we've basically just got the all-in-one flight controller, and then the Vista basically sits on top and floats there just with these 3D printed standoffs, which slot into these slots at the bottom and again into the top. And it works really well. When it's pressed together, everything's nicely compacted. You can even see here we've got a little GPS module, so you can sort of basically just use the app on your phone, the SpeedyBee app, or I'm not even sure if there's a Betaflight one these days, and configure it that way. So when like this, it looks terrifying, but it all clips together lovely. You can see we've got a little capacitor that they've soldered on here, and then on the other side you can see that we've got this regulator, which is a 12-volt regulator attached to the battery terminals, and this 12-volt regulator feeds the LEDs. And also, if you noticed before I pulled it apart, you've got a little extra wire here which you can use to power a Naked Hero with a Beck board, or obviously the Insta Cadex Peanut or that type of camera. So it's a lovely little thing. We've got the Gemfan 5-bladed props, which I usually hate because props with this many blades on, in my opinion, make the quad feel really numb. And although it sort of makes a smoother sound, you kind of lose flight feel. But on a little 2-inch quad like this, which would naturally be pretty jittery, I think it's the perfect match. And the whole thing to me just looks like a product that's been well designed. Everything just goes together, and what you end up with is a little 2-inch quad that is happy flying fast around your house, but one that can also carry a naked camera. And when it does that, it feels just as stable and just as capable as a much bigger 3 or 4-inch, Cine Quad, a Squirt or a ProTech 35 or that sort of thing. And it's just a really flexible little quad, and that goes down to the batteries. On the sort of racy bits, or me trying to race, some of them were on GMB 450s, and if you use these sort of whooping around your house under tables etc as fast as you can go, which in my case is not very fast, you get maybe 4.5 minutes flight time. Stick on a bigger 750 and you can go 6 or 7 minutes, and in terms of how it handles that bigger battery, it handles it absolutely fine. And when you're flying outdoors, I kind of actually prefer it with this bigger battery because it's less susceptible to wind gusts, which, because I live in Norfolk and it's really flat, is a bit of a problem when you're flying these little guys outside. But what I actually prefer to do when I'm flying it inside is use one of these, which is a 3S 550. And although this gives slightly less flight time than a 4S by maybe 30 seconds a minute, and the quad is actually slower, it's more fun to fly it when it's using a 3S battery indoors for me and my poor ability level, simply because I can feel like I'm on the more top of the throttle, whereas when I'm flying it on a 4S, I feel like I'm holding back all the time, and it's my ability that's making the quad slow rather than the actual pack. Stick a Hero on it and it becomes a Cine quad, and this particular one with a 750 milliamp hour 4S GMB battery will happily carry this naked Hero 8 for sort of 4:45, 5 minutes. With a lighter battery, you'll get 2.5 minutes, something like that. But the way it carries it is really, really impressive. It doesn't feel like you're struggling to keep the quad in the air. It'll still take off on 35% throttle, something like that. And it doesn't sort of flip or jitter or anything like that. It feels pretty smooth. However, because it is a ducted quad, we can't get around physics. And if you fly these little guys in acro mode without the camera on it on a windy day, if you catch a gust of wind, it will jerk and flip a little bit if you're trying to do spins or power loops or things like that. But on a flat calm day, it's perfectly happy doing inverted yaw spins and things like that, albeit you're not going to get a huge amount of hang time because it just doesn't have the power or the throw. So to cut this down, I think Flywoo have done a frankly terrific job here. By adding the LEDs, at the end of the day, this sort of little quad is meant to be about fun. It's not serious. It's not trying to be, a 5-inch, trying to get perfect inverted yaw spins and all that kind of stuff. Although it's called the Cinerace, it's not going to trouble any fast little toothpick or even, a fast whoop indoors, because it's either too big or too small, depending on where it is. But what it is a versatile, fun little quad, which in my bashing and crashing holds up really, really well. And in terms of a little safe 2-inch quad that's capable of carrying, a naked Hero or a Caddx Peanut or something like that, I think they've hit the mark bang on. And it's as perfect a product as really I've come across in terms of B&Fs. Simply because there's nothing major that stands out that you think, why did they do that? Actually, there is one, and that is the camera mount, which I don't know if this is because they've changed to the Nebula Pro Nano from the Polar Nano, but you'll notice on the camera, if I can bring it into focus, the camera actually sits on this bar or this plastic bit that goes across from the bottom, and it actually stops you from changing the camera angle because it hits it. So you end up having to sort of run a really high camera angle or a really low camera angle or not as low as you want to do, because you can't get the camera push it down past this place, and then you have to sort of go well past it to get the camera to get it 40-degree camera angle, etc., or whatever. It's not a huge issue. If I show you here, it's just this little bit which butts up against the base of the camera. All you need to basically do is just get a craft knife and just carve a little bit of that bottom plate out, and then you'll be able to freely move the camera up and down, which you should be able to do, certainly if you're planning to do a bit of cine work and then you want a whoop that you can fly around indoors. You're going to be flipping from a camera angle of 15 degrees to one of 30 degrees plus, And that is the only thing that I think is an oversight on their part, and that might be just because late in the day they decided to add the Nebula Pro Nano when it came out rather than the Polo Nano, which is a much worse 60 FPS camera, whereas this guy, we've got the full the full DJI ecosystem with all the setting changes, etc., that you can do. So that's it from me. I'll leave you with some flight footage and a little bit of cine whooping. Hats off to Flywoo. I think it's a really good little quad. Clearly it's not designed for full acro, and in any sort of wind it will struggle to do that, but for whipping around your house, mooching around outside, or even carrying a naked camera, it does the job as well as it could ever be expected to. In terms of tune, Flywoo have actually set up quite a good tune in my opinion, running Betaflight 4.28 I think it was. Everything was set up really well out of the box, filters, PIDs, etc. The only thing I had to do is change the serial port from serial 5 to serial 1 I think it was, to get this guy to work, and add in the arm switch, etc, etc. This guy is fully tuned and is using BL Heli M, so I can get RPM filters, and has also got sort of reduced filters and whatever. I've actually made an effort to tune it. Indoors doesn't make a bit of difference. Flying around your house, I think it flies fantastic. Outdoors, the RPM filter helps a little bit if the wind kicks up, but as an out-of-the-box tune, I think this little guy flies really, really, really well. And if you just want an easy update, then I would flash the ESC with BL Heli M, so you can turn on the RPM filters. I did try Blue Jay, but to me Blue Jay is a little bit buggy at the moment, and it seems to cause some sort of desync issues. So I've stuck to BL Heli M, and it's served me well. So that's it from me. Great product, fantastic. Obviously it will be lighter if you get it in the analog version. There are two analog versions, a cheap one and a more expensive one. I think the only difference is the VTX, and the cheaper one doesn't have the Bluetooth module. But DJI wise, really good product, decent price, a lot of fun to be had, and it feels really sturdy. And the thing I'm really looking forward to doing is getting together with one of my mates and doing some chase footage or something like that. You can buy the little regulator board and the LEDs separately, and the regulator has a little switch on it that you can turn the LEDs on or off, although I just leave them on, and I don't imagine that switch is going to last particularly long. But the LEDs are about sort of 13 quid I think for a set, and they work really, 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 really well. So yeah, so you can get these from the usual sources. Banggood have them. I bought this one from Your FPV as a BNF, and they also have the frames, the LEDs separately, and obviously the BNF. So that's it from me. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye.